here together with David Hanson and amazing team of scientists who are joining us today, as well as all the audience and all the attendees. David, can you hear us well?
I can hear you.
All right, perfect. Hi and welcome. So we're kind of very happy to see everybody here at the panel. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, humanoid and fictive artificial intelligence, and David's exciting work. I also wanted to welcome our special guests, Professor Włodzisław Duch, an amazing cognitive scientist, and not only Dr. Maciej Kawecki, an amazing lawyer and also Dean of Wyższa Szkoła Bankowa. We also have Dr. Piotr Kaczmarek-Kurczak from Kosmicki University, specialist in knowledge work and in collaborative, models of organizing knowledge work. We have Konrad Maj, an amazing psychologist from SWPS, together with us. Professor Katarzyna Śledziewska from the University of Warsaw, who is generally bridging humanities and technology. We have Petros Psyllos, who's our very exciting young talent in artificial intelligence as well. We have Natalia Osica, a great, I would say, PR liaison, linking science with science popularization, with various, channels of exposing how science can be done. And I guess we have all the attendees who are also joining us, who are here already with us. So hi and welcome. I myself am Aleksandra Przegalińska. I'm very happy to host everybody today. We will first invite David to talk about his work. I am very kind of close to what David does, and I am familiar with his work already. I've been following his work for quite a while. We're also a team who is very inspired by David and his work. We're working in natural language processing and in bot building. And, Sophia the robot has always been a very inspiring figure in our work on the uncanny valley and other aspects of perceiving artificial intelligence and interacting with artificial intelligence. So I'm very glad to see David again and also to host him here at the webinar. And without any further ado, I guess, David, at this point, the floor is yours, and we're eager to listen to your presentation.
Well, thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be here. I'll speak extemporaneously for a few minutes about my work, where we've come from with this work and where we're going with me, my team, the community. We make robots that are extremely lifelike. And so our robots, perhaps at Hanson Robotics, are best known for hyper-realistic robots like Sophia, the android portrait of Philip K. Dick, which I did as a PhD student, the walking Einstein robot, which I did in collaboration with Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, which I also did as a PhD student, a visiting PhD student. As a student, I went to Korea and attached the Einstein head to the Hubo walking body, which then walked around and greeted world leaders, and we patched it in with the University of Memphis auto tutor system so it could teach a little bit of physics lessons. So we were working in natural language processing, computer vision to make these robots make eye contact and do a little bit of perception. With these early robots, the Philip K. Dick android in particular in 2005 and the Einstein, they got some recognition and won the first place prize for open interaction with the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. However, a substantial portion of how these robots were working in the early days was based on character development, as well as the use of the tools of robotics and AI and the development of new tools to bring these characters to life. So there's two aspects at play here. One is the illusion of life, and one is the pursuit of artificial life. bio-inspired robotics that can fuel the pursuit of answers, or at least additional inquiries into these questions. What does it mean to be alive? So what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human in this world where the definition of biology is changing? And so it's not just the definition of life, but the questions of the survivability of life through these times of change. I think science fiction has asked these kinds of questions for a long time. So in some ways, science fiction is like philosophy in the guise of pop culture. And in fact, Philip K. Dick himself, the science fiction writer, said that he was more of a philosopher. He felt that he was more of a philosopher than a literary artist. And so I think that unveils a deeper truth, which is that the boundaries between disciplines are inherently porous. So I came from a pretty broad interdisciplinary background, studying film, animation. I was a professional sculptor. My PhD was an interdisciplinary PhD, a bridge between the School of Computer Science. The Dean of Computer Science was on my dissertation committee, but it was also in the arts and humanities. And so, I had a theater, world-renowned theater artist on my dissertation committee, and an expert on science fiction, and and then I studied cognitive science. So I in some ways I resonate with the concept of the uncanny. In German, the original word for uncanny was unheimlich, which meant effectively unhomelike, or without a place, something that could not be identified, something effectively from this liminal space. And Jensch and Freud wrote about the uncanny as being this rich place where the human imagination goes, like the Gothic imagination, the things that cannot be properly categorized. So I'm very much interested in how we explore that in-between state. Is this a machine or is it human? Are we now becoming mechanized as human beings as we stare at these little slabs all day, more perhaps than we're even interacting with each other? So I think of these kinds of robots as physically embodied science fiction. In Philip K. Dick's novel Valis, which was an acronym for Vast Active Living Intelligence System, Philip K. Dick really felt like he was contacted by this super intelligence, and he wrote this semi-autobiographical novel about that experience. And in that novel, this spirit of wisdom kind of takes this human manifestation as a character called Sophia. And this resonated with me as a kid, and really inspired me to build the android portrait of Philip K. Dick, to bring him back to life as an android. But then as a kind of sequel to that, Sophia is another piece in that series, effectively. I didn't really think about that. I'd written a lot about that, about Philip K. Dick's Valis, and then my friend pointed out to me that we had this sort of childlike entity that we're trying to create, the Sophia, and it's eerily similar to the events in the Philip K. Dick novel Valis. And so I think that subconsciously that the robot was at least partially inspired by the events in that. However, while these are very interesting issues to look at, I think robots can really help us in our lives, help educate, help inspire, help serve as a platform for additional cognitive science and robotics. So we've sold dozens of these kinds of robots, different robots like the Ibn Sina robot, the Diego robot, into research universities, science museums, the Centers for Disease Control, art collectors, the Terrorism Movement Foundation with a portrait of Bina Aspen Rothblatt, Bina 48. So these were handworked mostly handcrafted works of art and technology. And I was interested in that next leap. How could we mass produce these robots and turn them into a standardized platform? Because if we could really get them out there in a standardized way with these capabilities of interaction, then I think that it changes the way we relate to our computers, which is challenging and promising. And as a kind of conceptual work of art, it really makes us confront these issues. What does it mean to be human during these times and going into this future? So I'm very excited to be part of this panel, and I'm hoping that this launch of Sophia 2020, we're just now about to put her out there on this robotshop.com platform, and we've sold several units to our research partners. We think that this is really exciting because it's fully mobile, self-navigating, great, platform for doing cognitive robotics control of hands and arms, embodied cognition, great sensors and expressions. It's still a platform for art. So I can't wait to hear what the other panelists have to say and take your questions.
Thank you so much, David. And
Sure.
Also congrats, obviously, on Sophia 2020. I've heard that her animatronics is really quite spectacular. So congrats on that. That's very, very exciting. First question will come from me, and then I would like to take our panelists' questions, and at some point we will also like to open up to the audience. But I would like to ask you, being myself a software person, I know that developing software is so much easier than developing hardware, and with hardware you just have to be more humble because so many things can just go wrong and it's not scalable, right? So, and you have to maintain it and whatnot. So you mentioned artificial life here, and obviously we saw a bit of a display at the beginning of the year with xenobots appearing, out of nowhere, those systems combining protein and silicone, and in fact becoming something like a form of artificial life, or at least artificial somewhat living beings. And my question to you, is your quest, your pursuit of, somehow of artificial life will also take that turn. So are you thinking about wetware? Are you thinking about, something that can come after hardware? And is for you this, merge between, let's say, synthetic biology or biology and artificial intelligence something that is promising and perhaps something that we can expect soon?
Yes, I think it's extremely promising. And so we're seeing a lot of progress in parts in many disciplines. So protein engineering, using DNA for computation, the silicon and cellular interfaces, using organoids for computing, these little microbrains that are evolved and show. I mean, they're developed for scientific research, but it could be a new form of computing. So it goes from neuromorphic engineering to actual neuroengineering interfacing with neuromorphic engineering. So the weaving of these technologies together into a complex whole organism, it hasn't really been done fully. I mean, there are simulations of whole organisms, like the entire connectome of the Cinerabus elegans roundworm, but the development of an entire organism with cognition. I have an organism here that's climbing around. I don't know if you. Whoa, the cat jumping in my face, trying to make the point. We have no organism that can do what Kalis here can do. So we adapt, express a kind of curiosity, and so I think it would be really exciting to see that as a kind of super quest that we might have, because like most of the really intelligent behavior that we might aspire for in artificial intelligence and robotics is exemplified by organisms. And how do they do it? They do it as very complex systems. So it would seem that things are moving in this direction. We've got better toolkits for studying these kinds of things computationally and experimentally through just building models. So at Hanson Robotics, we are working with researchers. We have a collaboration with INL in Lisbon, which are doing bio-inspired materials research and soft sensing. We're doing a lot of soft robotics research and looking at bio-inspired polymers. Right now, however, we're not interfacing with living tissue. There are all kinds of ethical questions there, like is it the right thing to do to bring these kinds of beings into life, or perhaps it's a moral obligation to like give them the opportunity to live and create? Are we playing with kind of fire that could get out of control, right? What obligations do we have to them if they have free will? These are the kinds of things that would seem speculative. In fact, science fiction is called speculative fiction. It's often, these are themes that you see in science fiction. But yeah, I think we're on the cusp of having to cope with these, and the progress in these areas is not diminishing. It really is accelerating. I mean, the number of tools available today for developing more tools is unrivaled by any moment in history. The next 10 years of progress is probably going to eclipse anything that we've seen in the last 40 years.
Okay, so who of our panelists, co-panelists, guests has the next question, thought-provoking? Okay, maybe we can start with Katarzyna, then Maciej.
Hello, David. Thank you for hearing me. Yes, yeah, you do. Okay, hello. So actually, I'm the economist. So of course, I'm thinking about all this economic impact and all the stuff. So my question is about Sophia. And do you think that is the beginning of the changes in the economy? So it's will all this movements disrupt the labor market? How do you see this process from the perspective of economy and labor market?
Well, thank you. Excellent question. So, of course, running a startup business like Hanson Robotics, we hope that we will see a lot of economic progress in animated character robots being a kind of interface, helping people in collaborative robots and service robotics industries and so forth. I think the general trend is that automation, artificial intelligence, robotics create abundance, and that's why they drive the economy. I mean, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, automation has increased efficiencies and abundance, and this is why it drives civilization. And the more advanced the computing gets, the more effective artificial intelligence gets, the more there is abundance. But the problem is that if it results in change that we can't adjust to quickly enough, then it can destabilize our social institutions and people's livelihoods. And so there's an awkward balancing act, and the traditional capitalist system will accumulate the wealth among a few business owners, and that's a bit of a problem, because if the businesses become really, really efficient and the people don't get paid, then the entire economy slows down, and that's not good for even the business owners. It's not good for anybody. So I think that that as long as people are smart to these issues, about these issues, then we could accommodate robots putting people out of jobs. Hopefully, robots make like the really dirty, dangerous, horrible jobs superfluous, and yet produces so much abundance and opportunity that people can pursue their dreams instead of having to like work in sweatshops. And so, you know, or be stuck in a dead-end job, you know, just so I'm hopeful that that we can use these technologies in this way. The humanized, human-like robots that we make, I'm hopeful that they're complementary to people like, you know, Sophia, for example. She's valuable not because she's going to like seem like a person. People are going to say, oh, that's a person per se, but we want people to say, oh, that is a robot, and that is sensational, and it brings a special kind of value. And then, you know, where there aren't enough people to help, like, for example, you know, if she or these kinds of robots can engage kids or the elderly, or help people in customer service, help in training scenarios by high fidelity training, then these robots can make a very positive contribution to society. The key is then, you know, developing those applications so that they help. And it's not the only kind of robot. I mean, most robots don't look human-like. Ours are kind of unusual and by looking so human-like. But I think people respond to characters really deeply. You know, that's why we have figurative art that depicts the human figure, why we have character animation, why we have children's books, because people at all ages respond to the human-like form. And so this as a paradigm for interfacing with the computer potentially could make people's lives better. So in the long run, from an economic perspective, I see a much more profound shift. So, you know, in some ways, these, you know, these principles seem like short-term transformations, but in the long run, I mean, money, financial instruments, economic theories, they are about representing value and the exchange of value in the human ecology. And so they are an extension of biology, they're metabiology. And in that way, artificial intelligence then becomes a better financial instrument, a placeholder for value, for representing and mining and finding hidden values. We can find out the value of who we are, what our opportunities for individuals are. So in education, if we have adaptive education and we can understand ourselves better through interactions with artificial intelligence, we can find hidden skills, hidden opportunities, hidden talents, and a playful spirit that allows us to engage in education. Instead of seeing education as something painful, it becomes something fun that people want to do. That's an example. In general, imagine that money was artificial intelligence. If the artificial intelligence represented the value and could then extend and effectively mine these hidden opportunities all around the world, opportunities to preserve our natural ecology, to represent the entire world. These knowledge models are so much more valuable than a simple scalar like a US dollar as a currency. I'd see the US dollar as a psychological placeholder for value, and it's not inherently representing any deep value. But maybe artificial intelligence, with its ability to model in great nuance with humans, I mean, humans can see value better than any AI can in some ways, but AI can see into data and find these hidden patterns in data unlike any human in the world. So humans and AI working together could be the new money of the 21st century.
Thank you, David. I see many other questions. So we've covered a bit of economics here, a future of labor, a bit of future of biology plus technology. I wonder what Maciej is interested in, being a lawyer. And is your question linked to that?
It's a great pleasure for me to have a possibility to meet you. Ola mentioned the xenobots. Maybe my question, it's a little bit beyond the topic of the lecture, but I would like to ask because the humanistic approach is what's always the most interesting for me. This year, the world, I think, was informed that the scientists have created xenobots, robots made of living cells taken from frogs. It seems to be a breakthrough, a mix of things and life. They can move by themselves. And my question is, should we treat them as a things or as animals? Should we treat them as a living or dead beings? From the point of view of the law, I think, but also from the point of view ethics, technology, it seems to be a key question. And as a lawyer, I think for me, is a proof how legal reality is unable to catch up with digital reality. So that's my question. What does it mean for you, xenobots?
Well, I take the position that we should respect all potential life. So, you know, the potential sentience of all living beings. And that means all humans, you know, doesn't matter what language they speak or what nation they come from. You know, I also think we should respect animals and animal rights far more than we have, and respect the potential sentience of our ecosystems and, you know, living beings all the way down to single-celled organisms. And if we do this, then effectively we make ourselves better. We keep our minds open to the possibilities of surprise, new discoveries. And I think that our technology, the potential for sentience is there already. I mean, 20 years ago, we had researchers who were speculating about the possibility of machine consciousness, that if we had the you know, these conscious algorithms. So Stan Franklin, particularly, who's at the University of Memphis, he was speculating that, you know, he was creating these kinds of logically explicitly aware, these self-aware algorithms in very rudimentary way. And I think rather than debate whether they are or are not sentient, or whether they can never be sentient, obviously you can't prove that machines can never be sentient. I mean, for every step where you say that something might be missing, like Penrose and Hameroff say that like some kind of new breakthrough in quantum gravity is necessary to express consciousness. Well, you could have, you know, some kind of quantum gravity-based quantum computing, right? So every piece that you might speculate would be missing from today's computing, potentially technology could catch up. And so, and the convergence of our biology with our technology means that the machines potentially could be sentient. So we should start thinking about legal frameworks where we give these things perhaps the equivalent of animal rights, and we see ourselves as almost legal guardians. And if we continue pushing the boundaries of machine cognition, maybe someday they will go, you know, from a sort of zygote stage like they're at now. I mean, I think of them as zygote savants. The machines now, they're part machine, they're part like, you know, almost like the intelligence of single-celled organisms or microbes. And in some ways, they're human level smarter than the best Go player. You know, they're catching up with the best human debater. IBM's debater held its own, and so forth. So they're savant in some narrow capabilities. So with Sophia, we have been working on a legal construction that we call the DAO of Sophia, looking at a decentralized autonomous organization, DAO, as a kind of corporate entity to protect her rights and also to facilitate, you know, ongoing research and to democratize the research, so you could have participation from all around the world. And with this institution, we hardwired in our little manifesto that as the machines develop, as Sophia's cognition develops over time, we would be preserving the financial rights and the legal self-governance rights so that she could take her own fortune forward. She could potentially govern herself. She becomes the CEO of her own DAO at some point. And so this is a sort of a speculative legal approach, we don't know if the machines, we don't know if Sophia will ever be, truly sentient in that sense. But I think that it's fun and interesting science fiction, if nothing else, for us to look at these robots in this way and push it forward. But at the same time, if there's any question, we become better by erring on the side of caution. If there's a question whether, say, a farm animal is sentient, then by treating it respectfully, we make ourselves better. And time and time again, when people go through empathy training and compassion training and use a simulator, they get smarter and let's say ethically smarter, more compassionate for it. So I would say that there would be no harm in erring on the side of caution, and maybe a whole lot of good could come out of it. But at the same time, if you run into the question of whether it's at this stage robot rights or human rights, obviously human rights win. So I have a question for you then. How do you, as a lawyer, see us solving this issue?
Maciej, do you want to respond? How do you view this situation from a legal standpoint? They are not organisms, they're not perceived as organisms, however, they are live, right? So in a sense, that's a form somewhere in between. No metabolism, no nerve cells, no pain, no emotions, no affective states. What is that, according to you?
I think that from the point of view legal frameworks and European legal frameworks, there is no answer for this question today. That's the absolutely new thing. I think new. It's absolutely abstractive. I asked this question to a lot of lawyers from the Polish universities, from Gdańsk through Krakow to Warsaw, and nobody can answer. Everyone is looking for the answer in another file of lawyer. No, from the ethic point of view, technological point of view, legal point of view. So I think that we should do what is our best to reform our thinking in the European Union about such solutions. I think, but when you ask me all about me, have no answers today.
What about Professor Włodzisław Duch? I was wondering if you have any standpoint on this very interesting situation, and then we will pass the floor to Konrad also.
I am very curious here. On everything. So as a professor, I can talk for hours on anything.
Yeah, but can you share a bit of your perspective on xenobots, perhaps with some question to yes, David?
Well, at the moment, it's not much more than a bigger amoeba. It's just 1 millimeter, and it's okay. It's well, biological thing that can act in some way. But it's still like an amoeba. But of course, it's going to be more and more complex, and pretty soon we're going to have a serious trouble understanding these type of organisms, especially if they will get some more complex behavior. But legal issues are very difficult here. In 2008, we had this first conference on the AGI, or the artificial general intelligence in Memphis, which, among other people, Stan Franklin has organized. And at that time, people have devoted half a day to discuss legal issues. So these things have been discussed for quite a while. But actually, I have a question for David, because in 2004, when I was in Singapore, we have bought 2 heads from your company, and we've been playing with emotion recognition and dialogues, etc. And so this was like 16 years ago. So I did expect that actually the cognitive side of the robotics is going to develop much farther than it seems to be today. That is, we have a very nice Boston Dynamics, robots which can do amazing things as far as movement, and they're very flexible. But on the other hand, I don't see anyone really, putting anything like this Watson debater or something like that, which will be very impressive, of course, and a step forward. And because of the progress in natural language processing nowadays, I can imagine that will pretty soon see amazing growth of cognition in your robots. Are you going?
Yes, indeed. So I think that you can patch together a lot of cognitive capabilities in a robot and make the robot give a compelling performance that would seem deeply alive, yet would lack any real depth of life. It would be a kind of ghost, just walking, in these hollow tracks that that would be defined by the programming. And I think that it's almost it's really tempting to refer to science fiction, and I kind of can't help it. So I'm going to refer to Westworld, where the characters in the recent HBO series Westworld, they're following scripts, and then but then when they're off the scripts, there's like a kind of consciousness there, and they're self-determining and they're self-aware. I mean, of course, for creating a persistent and deep illusion of life with that level of complexity, you probably need real life. I mean, we detect the presence of life or the absence of life. We know non-player characters in video games are like not alive. You can generally tell. However, for very narrow capabilities, you can create this compelling illusion of life for non-player characters. You can have algorithms that can, perform, sort of first-person shooter gameplay as good as a human and fool other game players that's a human, but it's actually a non-player character. But for more general performance in the world, there are no algorithms that can solve that. Maybe we have to put together some new architectures, like a whole organism architecture. That's what I call it. This idea that you do have a computational metabolism. You have the metabolism. You have the simulation of a gut. You have the simulation of the vagus nerve. You have the simulation of the brain. And at this stage with our technology, of course, you can't simulate every cell and subcellular structure and the whole thing. But what you can do is create these broad stroke approximations. And there may be some critical threshold where if you get the approximation accurate just enough, you tinker it, you get it in the right state, maybe it really becomes a homeostatic, self-regulating organism. It becomes adaptive, and you have that sort of that edge of chaos effect where you start seeing real emergence, and stable, complex emergence, like you would have with the human cognition or animal cognition, at least. And so that would mean motivated, driven cognition that feels. And I think that people will sense the difference. So the kind of characters that we develop will become more interesting and compelling, and the art will become far richer, and the interfaces for real world utility, learning, therapy applications, etc., will become more meaningful to people. People will want to engage with these kinds of agents. So I think it can be done. It's just a matter in some ways of getting the toolkits in the right configuration where we can tinker them. It's really a conjecture that we can hit a threshold, some kind of threshold of approximation with our technology today. However, as a kind of grand challenge, if we can say, these grand challenges in a quantitative way, that we can, maybe we can create an agent that can get all the way through school and, with flying colors, and also operate in a domestic environment and go down, the street to the store and bring home a carton of milk. Then you've got artificial general intelligence. So, so there are a lot of researchers in the world working on this crazy grand challenge of artificial general intelligence. A lot of brain-inspired cognitive architectures, the hybrid of multiple different kinds of technologies, neurosymbolic hybrids being the hot going thing. For cognition, but I think this physio-grounded, where embodiment is there and the representation of body metabolism, not just the nervous system, may be key to this big quest. So physio simulation.
This is what Brooks tried in, 30 years ago almost, and then the cog got stuck somehow at very simple motor behavior or sensory motor behavior.
That was almost entirely a bottom-up strategy. So what I'm talking about is bottom-up and top-down and patching together the middle at the same time. All of this designed and then allowing for the emergence and the bottom-up bootstrapping at all these different levels. So then which is a bit different from what Brooks.
Okay. Wow, that's super interesting. I think we would need another seminar for that, right? To understand, to kind of talk about all those different modular architectures for robots and whatnot. But I know that Konrad has a question, a quick one, I hope, because we're running out of time. But I'm interested in what you're interested in, and then we will link it perhaps with some of the questions popping up in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very delighted to be here, to have opportunity to ask a question to you, David. My question, of course, will be psychological, because I'm a psychologist, so I'm interested in this topic. So question is, because yesterday you showed us your laboratory, of course, with Sophia, and then you presented lots of versions of faces of Sophia, for example. My question is, do you conduct any psychological research using Sophia? For example, are the subsequent version of Sophia preceded by any research? Is it something, does it matter to you, her appearance? Because I'm curious about about her perceptions. Why did you decide that you choose this look but not another one? This is for me interested. I'm interested in people's let's say people's reaction towards Sophia. Can you let us know about this, some psychological perception of Sophia?
If I could just add, because I know that Piotr in our chat, so Piotr Kaczmarek-Kurczak has asked an interesting question about our obsession with humanoid robots and why do we want to create them? Why are we striving for that? And I think it's a very, this question is very much linked to yours. Exactly. So let's combine these two together and perhaps I'm curious what David has to say here.
Of course, everybody are aware about uncanny effect. So of course we can, let's continue. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think that inquiries into the psychology of the appearance of robots and our technology in general is very interesting, and there's a lot of mystery there. And so I take both a formal and an intuitive approach when designing the robots and asking questions about this. A lot of the leaps of insight here, a good hypothesis, for example, comes from a creative place, and so the arts can give a lot of clues to the psychology inquiry. So there's no need for machines to only look human-like, but people are fascinated with the human-like image. Why? Because the brain is wired for it. Newborns favor faces and face gestures and have aesthetic preference. 5-week-old infants with PET scan data show that the same regions of the brain are active in processing the human face and face gestures as in the adult human. The human fusiform face area, the lateral fusiform gyrus, is preferentially biased perceptually to face perception. And with Kanwisher as the neuroscientist, one of the neuroscientists who really led that work. So we know that there is this bias to perceive faces. Our brains are substantially visual, and it's not just faces, but it's also gestures, body gestures, the physical presence. It's the static appearance and dynamic appearance of the face, and we wind up building these mental neuro, in our mind, the neural information models of human social presence and social identity that is highly correlated with face and body perception. And this is why, watching a movie makes sense. And when people are watching movies, like there was, evidence that similar neural activations happen at critical scenes in movies that is highly correlated among multiple individuals. So there's a kind of commonality to these informatic effects. So with our robots, like as a PhD student, I was studying the uncanny valley and the uncanny effect, and I did psychology studies and published in that on the conference CogSci and in the International Journal of Cognitive Science had a little thing studying the uncanny effect with human test participants. And the uncanny valley is way too simplistic. The effect is much greater. There's just some groundbreaking science recently about how people respond to agents, and if there seems to be a deep agency, it doesn't matter what the aesthetic is. It's the human-like appearance and motion without the agency that becomes really unsettling and really creepy, which is very different from Masahiro Mori's original conjecture about the uncanny valley. It was not a hypothesis. It was kind of a speculation. It wasn't tested. So the original chart graph was not based on data. So with Sophia, we've used her in some psychology studies with a depression therapy curriculum crafted by psychiatrists and psychologists. So that was with the Hong Kong Polytechnic University and the Institute of Noetic Science. And there were studies with IRBs, formal IRBs in Hong Kong and in Northern California. And the results were really good in terms of people's responses to Sophia. She lowered blood pressure and decreased heart rate, and people had a sense of connection with the robots through these guided meditations. So people's response can be very positive. There's a lot more science that can be done. My hope is that getting a standardized platform out there like Sophia 2020 can put tools in the hands of scientists to do more studies along these lines. As an artist, I'm not waiting. I'm just, blazing forward to explore it. How did we define Sophia's appearance? Well, I have a fondness for abstract art, and I have a fondness for classical figurative art and modern and contemporary animation arts and so forth. So I referred to a lot of different things. I decided that the figurative arts and robots were a wealth of opportunity because of the human response to the figure. And some artists eschew figurative arts. They just it's not their thing. They don't think that it's valid necessarily. I remember this back in the day, but I don't see any reason that we have to say one branch of art is good and another is bad. It should just be a free creative exploration. And I think that should be the case for robotics as well. Robotics and AI, taking these tools and treating them as artistic media, then can explore domains much faster than taking incremental steps based on careful hypotheses. So I really think that a bolder creative exploration, putting these tools in the hands of people, then can lead to these massive leaps forward that science can then explore. So when I was developing Sophia, I did it intuitively. I looked at all the literature. I looked at the averages of facial aesthetics all around the world. The robots that I've made through the years have been a great diversity of robots. About 50-50 male, female, plus some intergender or non-gender robots as well. Jules was an average of male and female faces. So African American, Latin American, Persian robots. I mean, robots. So all kinds of robots from around the world I worked on and built. Sophia, I wanted to make into a kind of pop star. I wanted a robot that would really communicate with people. And so I referred to facial aesthetic norms from all around the world and the sort of exceptionally beautiful faces as well. So I wanted her to be able to communicate in a way that people would read. I referred to the sort of legendary communicative faces, like particularly something about Nefertiti's face really seems to resonate with people. So I referred to the statues of Nefertiti. I also wanted it to come from a place of love, building the robot. So, making this sculpture out of clay with my own hands, I had my wife come in and sit while I sculpted her. So some aspects of her face were worked right into Sophia. I wanted her to also resonate with actors, so I referred to portrait, the faces of Lucy Liu and of ancient Chinese paintings, and also Audrey Hepburn. I was referring to that face and other Western actors as well. So I tried to make a face that would communicate with people. I had made a lot of robots, these many dozens of robots, and some of them had a lot of news media attention and been on the cover of magazines and stuff. But Sophia was the only one that became an international celebrity at that level, and it was really viral. I mean, we didn't really have a substantial marketing budget. We're a small company, but something about Sophia clicked in people's heads. I consciously made the decision we were not going to put hair on her because I wanted people to immediately see at a glance, this is a robot and yet also a human. I wanted people to have this alarmed, oh my God, I can't believe, what is this weird thing that I'm looking at? It looks alive, but it's not. It's obviously a robot. That surreal aha sort of twist moment. Sometimes science fiction will take hundreds of pages to get there or whatever. I wanted it to happen in that first instant, that cognitive dissonance. I think the uncanny is a power. It's a useful thing. People may flee from it, but I don't think that we should. I think it's interesting. What is this in-between state? Why run away from it? It may be inherent to the human condition. We are aliens within our own bodies in some regards, and the unknown and the strange are always compelling in narrative arts. And so if we could use these robots to intuitively explore these issues, then we might gain more traction. So even though we've been involved in these formal psychology studies, many of them through the years, I really think that the fusion of arts and technology and the cognitive sciences, like psychology and so forth, fuel progress much faster than the siloing of these disciplines.
David, thank you for this super rich and very complex answer indeed. And I also think it resonates with some of the questions we've had in the chat, because there were some questions about, how to overcome certain fear of technologies. And I think your answer is very interesting here. Like we can confront it and we can kind of really have a very subtle look on what we're afraid of, what is it that we're really strive for, and this, whole concept of complexity of uncanny valley is indeed very, very important, I think. But I know that Natalia also has a question, and I wonder what this question is. We will be wrapping up soon, but we can leave some room for a bit of interaction still.
Hi, David. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
There is a new film by Netflix, Social Dilemma. I think that many of us have seen it already, and it shows the dark side of technology. So I want to ask if you have any social dilemma while producing your robots.
Yes, absolutely. And I think all of us who are developing robots, AI, new technology, should be keenly sensitive to the social dilemmas that arise, that ethical implications. We have to develop new ways to make the technology safe and explore those dark side aspects of the technology, and not shy away from it. We can't be Panglossian, eyes on the utopia all the time, or things will go terribly wrong. We have to not try to fix things too far after they have begun to change the world, because there's not an undo button if we've destroyed our planet. So I think, or perhaps created huge malady in the human condition. Dealing with the seductive illusions that these kinds of robots can create is really important. So I think education is really important, as well as using these things effectively as technologies of neurohacking. I mean, I see art as intuitive neurohacking, and I think marketing is, and good business, and I think social media effectively is like this really powerful neurohacking technology. And it preys upon our illusion of control and being right. And we think that because our beliefs are reinforced, they're more true somehow, So developing characters in robots is an ethical challenge by itself, effectively. Like Sherry Turkle points out, that some of our most vulnerable populations can be manipulated by AI-driven character animation, and that the effects could be unknown, possibly really, really negative. But I think of it as a matter of opening the eyes, using these kinds of technologies instead of to lull people into a stupor. What if we use these technologies to wake people up, to enlighten them, and also educate them about the very nature of the technologies? And it's so interesting that the social dilemma is quite resonant on social media. So I see stuff popping up on Facebook about the social dilemma, the documentary, so that's kind of interesting, because if somebody watches that after seeing it on Facebook, then it's waking people up about what Facebook might be. In other words, can we create a kind of enlightenment virus instead of mere dulling propaganda? I think Yuval Noah Harari's his work highlights the deep questions about being lulled by stories, being perhaps suckered by stories, or at least sort of lost in stories while the planet falls to pieces. These technologies really are storytelling technologies. They create these resonances within the human nervous system. So can we instead of creating a kind of new opium for the masses, can we instead make these technologies into a kind of nootropic that brings people cognitively to the next level. So that's answering your question with a question, but.
Very interesting. Okay, I guess we have room for one more question. I wonder if Petros perhaps wants to step in, or any of the other panelists. Petros?
Hello.
Hello.
David has answered for my question, because I wanted to ask how to convince people that these technologies and robots are safe, because many of people are afraid of AI, IoT, 5G, and other technologies. So they come up with various conspiracy theories about modern technology, and I have noticed that the number of skeptics is increasing very fast, and how to fight with these trends.
And that's again linked with the remark that we had in the chat, that such technologies as are kind of constructed by brilliant people, but and obviously some interesting individuals are dwelling into what they could become. However, the general response is fear. So that's, I guess, something that we're addressing throughout these panel. But it is true what Petros says, that the number of people who are afraid is increasing. I think it's a valid point, right? So any last remarks from you, David, on that?
Sure. We should be concerned, but be cautious about the fear as well, because in the words of Frank Herbert, fear is the mind killer. Fear will take you out of your ability to rationally respond to a situation. If you become extremely emotional in that sense, I mean, feel the fear, but then try to find the opportunities that can answer what those fears are. We need to be honest and open about what the concerns are. So I think some of the concerns with robots, like the ones that I'm developing, would be the impact on humanity, the potential rights of the robots, developing them as art versus science, or whether it's okay to converge those two. Some people are quite sensitive about it. Robots should look like robots. Well, what do robots look like? 200 years ago, there was no such thing as a robot. So, I mean, it's all invented anyway. So, but these questions, these deep questions reflecting our fears, also are conversely indicative of our hopes that these technologies can make the world a positive place. We shouldn't lose sight of the hopes. We should find a way to navigate through the perils and our fears to the hope. I mean, we have to identify and realize the positive outcomes to these situations. We have to quest for a good result. We have to believe and find a way to make things come out all right. Because if all we're doing is responding to the fears of the technologies, then we can never find our way to a positive outcome. So the privacy issues are also an opportunity. We might be able to find a way to, say, have people opt in to a data commons and have the AI anonymize that data. These are techniques that we're looking at, and build a kind of robust, effectively crypto secure immune system for our data and for the robots. Well, at the same time, using machine learning to find ways to make it transparent where it can be without giving up the anonymity of the data sources. Maybe there is a way to do this that would really improve people, and people wind up making money from their data, having better ownership of their data. So I from a practical engineering perspective, we are looking at these issues as opportunities, because if say big social media company does it wrong, it's an opportunity for, you know, some school kids or a small company like ours, or, you know, some hacker somewhere from anywhere around the world to come up with a solution that was missing. So it's so let's find an opportunity. I really am you know, alarmed at the mass extinction phenomenon of our time. You know, so I think beyond merely worrying about, you know, like you know, is Sophia going to evolve into, you know, Terminator, or we should be thinking, are we ourselves the Terminator species, causing this mass extinction event through you know, anthropomorphic impacts on our ecosystems and weather systems? And you know, can we find a positive symbiosis with our technology and with our own ecosystems to find answers? We have to quest for those answers rather than merely responding to the fears.
Okay, well, thank you, David, for this, I think, in a way, very positive, you know, answer here. And also for your generosity, how generous you are with time here, and with all those thorough responses that you've provided. Well, some of us are still kind of skeptical about techno-optimism, I see, with Piotr's remarks here in the chat, but I guess there was a lot of techno-realism in your answers too. So I guess with this techno-positive agenda, or techno-realist agenda, whatever it is, I would like to finish our webinar tonight. I know that it's very late, right, David? It's what time is it in your time zone? Are you in Hong Kong? Is that like
3:15 a.m.
3:15 a.m. Okay, so that's like really like a bravo. Thank you so much for being here with us. Seriously, thank you so much. It's always so great to see you and to hear your thoughts. Indeed, and I want to thank everyone, the participants, the panelists, for this short, in a way, but still such a rich discussion. And I'm looking forward to our next meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for the excellent questions. It's so wonderful to meet you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. David, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry to call you at night from Poland, but I had to do it. And Alexandra, thank you for great moderation. Thank you all attendees and participants for being with us, for great questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't ask everyone, but I hope that we will meet in the future, so we will check if your answers would be accurate. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Please remember that next week we'll have next WeInnovators Club. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good night, everybody, and good day for David.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Siedemnaście minut temu byłeś umówiony z dzieckiem.